Hi everyone, welcome back to the Etymon Project. Today is going to be the second part in my video on Color Me Confused, where I'm going to be going over the rest of problem number 1 for this problem, Color Me Confused. So if you haven't seen part 1, you should go see that one first. But yeah, let's just get back into it. And now going back to what we said earlier about how one of these columns is going to be G or H, and then the other one is going to be from one of these columns. What that means is that either this column is H, bright plum, or fresh grass. And then of course, G is just going to be the one from Minu or Maxa that is not H. Using the same rule, we can also think about if we know that G and H have to be in one of these 4 columns, then if we look one level up, we see that we have only these 3 words that are repeated. So we only have one set of non-unique words. And based on rule number 5, since a language only has a unique word for G if it also has one for H, then let's say that this column, fresh grass, was letter G, then that would contradict rule number 5 because we would have a unique word for G, we would have caisson, but since we know that H is going to be one of these other 3 columns with din, then we know that H would not have a unique word here. So that would contradict the first part of rule 5. So from there we can conclude that this column here, fresh grass, is not G. So now I think we only have a few cases left, like if we know that these 2 columns here are not H, and we know that G and H have to be in these 4 columns, then we can say that this column could be H, and this column could be H. So we can test out these hypotheses using rule number 5, which states that, again, a language only has a unique word for G if it also has one for H. So what this means is that any language that has a repeated word for H but only one word for G is invalid. So what this basically means is if we find a language that has a repeated value for H but a unique value for G, then we know that whatever scenario we're testing out cannot be true, because this would mean that a language has a unique value for G while not having a unique value for H. So that would be a contradiction of that first statement. Let's test out right plum being H first. So if right plum was H, then that would mean since right plum is Minu, then G would have to be Maxa. So out of the 2 Maxas, we know that fresh grass is not G, so clear sky would have to be G. This is just the testing out. I'll write out our tests in red. So again, if we ever have a unique term for G, but not a unique term for H, then we know that this situation is invalid. So we can start near the middle because we know that at the top there's going to be a lot of repeated values. But let's see if we see any repeated values for H. So I see Luban, kale, pigwig, din, and then din over here, and then Minu and Minu. So those are kind of the main ones. Oh, gra and gra. And then for G, are there any words in G where in these rows there's going to be just one word for G? So not here because it's part of this triple. Not here because there's a phoebon here, not here because there's 3 coeals, not here because there's 2 piles, not here because there's 2 dindins, and not here because there's 2 maxes. So this scenario definitely seems to work out. We can, I guess, just keep it as one of our options that worked out. And now let's test the other option where this one over here is H. Since H is Maxa in this case, then G would be Minu. So we can test out G being over here first. So for H, let's see if we have any repeated terms, while in the G column we only have 1. So if I'm looking at this column for G, we actually see that there's not really any terms here that would be unique. So it sounds like this would work out because they're sort of all shared. And now let's test the other version where the other Minu is G. So over here, there's also not really any unique values. So that means that both of these are definitely possible. And I'll just keep them in their layers so we know what the different possibilities are. Okay, so now that we have these 3 cases, we can just kind of test each of them to see which one will be our final answer. Let's just start with the top one. We can fill in F here because F kind of has to just go in this last open slot because we kind of have letters for all the others. And we can do the same thing with the rest of these cases. We'll name them 1, 2, and 3 So in 2, F would go here because it's the only other open slot. And then for 3, F would go here as the only other open slot. So for testing scenario 1, what we want to be thinking about is whether G is sharing a word with at least one of A, D, or F as kind of that last part of the 5th rule. So if we're checking hui, we see that it's matching with hui over here, so that's an F. KP is also matching with F, and Yaga with F. Tire with F, Mumu with F, and so on. We get Vibon, which is matching with only this fresh snow category, which means that there's a condition here where A equals FS. And then Koya with F, Pili with F, Dindin with F, and then Maxa with this. That's the only other Maxa with fresh grass, so that means D would have to equal fresh grass. Okay, but it's definitely still possible. There's no contradictions yet. Okay, so let's move on to case number 2. And for G, we have a hui here and a hui here, so that checks out. KP, Ebi, and our only other Ebi with an A, D, or F is over here, so we have a condition that A equals ripe strawberry. Iso, Pew, Gragra, and Gragra, Luban, Kel, Peakwig, Dindin, Minu, and Minu. So that also checks out. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, and the reason why I'm not going over here is because these are, purple is a unique word, so it's not going to apply where G is going to have to share a word with anything else. And that's kind of the same for most of the words down here, except for just like these. So, and lastly, let's just test out this 3rd case. We can start with this column Deep Ocean, because that's where a G is. So hui is going to match with like this F going to this hui. And then KP is same thing. And Yaga. So the thing about Yaga is our only option is this or this. So we can either make this D and this B, or we could do the opposite. So let's just start out with this and see how it goes. Tire and tire match up. Umu, Graga, Paban. So Paban has to go with this one over here because that's the only other Paban. But unfortunately, this Paban is in the B column, so in this case, the G doesn't share a word with an A, D, or F. And even if we go back and switch the columns that we guessed at earlier, so we made like this B and this D, then it still wouldn't work because we would get stuck right here where the only tire options are E, H, and B. So we can get rid of case 3 because we proved that it doesn't work. And now all we have to do is consider whether case 1 or case 2 is correct. If we're looking at case 1, we concluded that A is going to be fresh snow and D is going to be fresh grass. So that means B would be adult crow and C would be ripe strawberry. And I think the only rule that we haven't really used yet is number 4, where if it has at least 6, it distinguishes D from F. If we check our column D over here, and we check our column F, then we see that at level 6 and beyond, these are completely different, so that's a good sign. And now if we check for the other one, we had A is ripe strawberry, and then we had C is fresh snow, and we had that B has to be hui to fill in this last slot here, so that means that D has to be adult crow. And if we're comparing columns D and F over here, we see that at level 6, they also seem to be completely different. So now we have to turn to some other rules to see what could possibly be wrong about one of these. And I just kind of cleaned up our 2 cases over here. So let's just go back through each rule and carefully test whether each of these cases holds up. So for rule number 1, it's just that A and B are going to be completely different. For case number 1, A and B are completely different. And over here, A and B are also completely different, so that doesn't help us much. If we move on to the next one, if it has at least 3, it uses different words for each of A, B, and C. So if we look at case 1, A, B, and C, we see that if you just kind of scan across, at least from 3 onward, they're all going to be different. And then if we look at the other one, we have A, B, and C. You'll notice that there's actually a repeat right here with phoebon, phoebon. So this cannot be the right answer, which means that our top one is correct, case 1. So we can go ahead and add in each of these letters. We had ripe plum is H, ripe strawberry is C, ripe banana is E, fresh grass is D, clear sky is G, deep ocean is F, adult crow is B, and fresh snow is A. And yeah, that's the solution to problem 1, and I'll definitely release the next 2 parts in a later video that'll hopefully come out in the next 2 days or so. So I hope this part was helpful and it wasn't like too much logic, a lot of casework, I would say. I don't even know if my solution is the most efficient, but I was really trying to make sure I wasn't assuming anything or guessing anything. So it might have taken a pretty long and like rigorous process, but hopefully it was helpful. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.